Most travelers think international preparation means booking flights and packing bags, but the decisions that actually protect the trip happen weeks earlier, and almost nobody ever talks about them. There's also a free 5-minute government program connecting you to the nearest U.S. embassy in an emergency, and most people have never even heard of it. Want to walk into that airport knowing every single thing is handled before you even leave your home? Then stick around. Somewhere in a folder on an old hard drive, one that doesn't exist anymore, there's a PDF I built back in 1997. It was a travel checklist, 2 columns. I used it for every trip for almost 15 years. It covered the obvious stuff, sure, like passports and tickets and hotel confirmations, but it also covered the things that I'd missed on earlier trips when I was moving fast and just trusting my memory. Like a frozen credit card in Mexico, a rental car reservation I'd forgotten to make, a phone charger I'd forgotten to pack. I know, a charger. A $10 problem that became a 2-hour side quest in an unfamiliar city before smartphones could just point me to the nearest store. Anyway, that checklist survived until about 2012 when I got a new computer. The hard drive transfer from my old machine didn't quite work right, and then poof, it was gone. The discipline survived, but the document didn't. Now, what you're getting today is the rebuilt version, sharpened by almost 50 years of international travel and focused specifically on the 7 items that carry the highest consequence if you skip them. Now, I want to be clear about what this episode is and what it isn't. This is not a packing list. This is not a remember your adapter checklist. The 7 items we're covering today are the decisions that don't feel urgent right up to the point where they become urgent. A passport that fails at an airport check-in. A medical bill that arrives 6 weeks after your trip. A boarding pass that never gets issued because a license doesn't say what you thought it said. I want you to think of this plan the way I used to think about product line reviews as a merchant. Start by asking yourself a simple question. What does great look like? Now that forces you to start with the end in mind. Picture yourself sipping a fruity drink poolside and then build backwards through every single decision that gets you there. You're not solving problems anymore. You're building a roadmap for success. Do you have a roadmap for your trips? If so, drop it in the comments down below. I'd love to hear how you guys plan. All right, 7 things we're going to go through today. Let's go through them all. All right, pull out your passport right now, or maybe at least after this episode. The first check is obvious. Is it expired? But here's the thing most travelers miss, including experienced ones. Most countries require that your passport be valid for at least 6 months beyond your travel dates. Beyond. That means if you're traveling in October and your passport expires in February, you may be denied boarding before you ever even reach the gate. And here, this is where I want to slow down for a moment. I've been keeping some notes on this for a long time, and this is an entry that deserves more than just a passing mention. Most travelers check whether their passport is expired. That's the obvious check. But what almost no one checks, including people who've traveled internationally before, is whether there's enough time left on the clock. The 6-month rule isn't some rumor. It's a standard enforcement policy at check-in counters worldwide. The airlines are the ones who enforce it, not just the destination countries. They're the ones who get fined for putting an invalid traveler on a plane. Now, I've never personally been caught by it, but I've read enough horror stories, families turned away at gates, honeymoons that started in ticket counter arguments. You just don't want to experience this. Here's the reassurance. The check takes just 30 seconds. Open up your passport, find the expiration date, count the months. If you're within 6 months of a trip, start the renewal process today. Standard renewal currently runs about 6 to 8 weeks. Expedited processing is available for an extra $60 or so on top of the standard fee. And if you have a documented imminent travel coming up, 14-day rush processing can be available. The window is the variable. The action is the same. Check the date. Now, there's a technical exception for the Schengen area. That's the zone covering most of Western Europe. The requirement there is 3 months beyond your planned departure from the region, not 6. But some airlines flying Schengen routes still apply a 6-month buffer, just as their policy. So treat 6 months as the floor. It's the number that works pretty much everywhere. The second check is blank pages. Many countries in Africa, Asia, and South America require 2 to 4 blank visa pages in order to grant entry. Not endorsement pages, not these ones in the back with all the fine print. Blank stamp pages. If your passport is well traveled and you're running short on space, that's worth knowing before you're standing at some border. One more thing. While the passport is in your hand and you're thinking about your international travel, if you have global entry, check that expiration too. It's a separate credential with its own 5-year clock, and it's not renewed automatically. Now, a note on what it is. For anyone who's new to this, Global Entry is a U.S. Customs and Border Protection program that lets pre-approved Low-risk travelers skip the standard customs line when returning to the United States from international destinations. It includes TSA pre-check with your enrollment, so it works domestically as well. If you have it and it's within a year of expiring, put the renewal of that on the list too. This next one I actually learned while building out this episode, and I'll be honest, I've been traveling internationally for decades and I'd never even heard of it. It's called STEP, the Smart Traveler Enrollment Program. It's free, it's run by the U.S. State Department, and it takes about 5 minutes to set up. The links are on the screen and in the description down below. I'm genuinely a little bit embarrassed I didn't even know about this one, but here we both are. Here's what it does. When you register a trip, you're connecting yourself to the nearest U.S. embassy or consulate at your destination, and that connection does 3 things. First, it puts you on the list to receive safety alerts and travel advisories for that country, not just generic warnings, but destination-specific updates. Second, in an emergency, natural disaster, civil unrest, a family crisis back home, the embassy has a record that you're there. They can help locate you. And third, and this matters more than most people think, if your passport is lost or stolen abroad, being registered can meaningfully speed up the replacement process. None of this means something is going to go wrong, though. The vast majority of international trips unfold without a single issue. But STEP is a safety net that exists whether you need it or not, and enrolling takes 5 minutes. I'm going to be registering before my trip to Japan this fall. I'd encourage you to do the same before your next big international trip. Now, here's one of the most common and most preventable problems in international travel. A frozen credit card on day one. Visa is accepted worldwide. That's been their marketing message for some 30 plus years, and it is true. But what the marketing doesn't mention is that your bank is running pattern recognition on your account in real time. And a sudden cluster of foreign charges, especially in a country you've never spent time in before, well, that can look exactly like fraud, because sometimes it is. So the system flags it, and then your card stops working at a restaurant in Lisbon at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday night, and you can't call the number on the back of the card because you're abroad and your phone plan doesn't cover international calls, and you're trying to explain to the host that you do, in fact, have money, but not access to it right now. I mean, all this is hypothetically speaking. The fix is simple. Most major issuers, Chase, Citi, Capital One, Bank of America, they now have travel notification features built directly into their apps. Just open up their app, find the travel notice option, enter your destination, and then your travel dates, and then done. If your bank's app doesn't have it, call the number on the back of the card before you leave. 2 minutes. Do it for every card you plan to use overseas. I want to challenge how you think about this next one, because the instinct for most people is to hear travel insurance and then mentally file it under, I'm probably fine, I'll just skip it. Here's what matters. Medicare does not cover international medical care. Full stop. If you're on Medicare and you get sick or injured abroad, you're going to be paying it out of pocket. Most domestic health insurance plans also have the same kind of gap. Some policies do include limited international benefits, but the coverage is often narrow, the reimbursement process is slow, and the dollar limits are relatively low compared to the actual costs. But the number that should get your full attention isn't the hospital bill, it's the evacuation. Medical evacuation, being transported from a remote or under-resourced location into a facility equipped to treat you or back to the United States, well, that can run you anywhere from $50,000 to $250,000 depending on where you are, how far you need to go. That's not some worst-case hypothetical. That's the documented cost range for real events that happen to real travelers every year. This isn't about being pessimistic. I'm not suggesting you pack for disaster. What I'm suggesting is that there is exactly one scenario where an otherwise perfect trip becomes a financial catastrophe, and a travel medical policy with evacuation coverage removes it entirely. Think of it like this. It's like buying homeowner's insurance on a house you have no intention of ever burning down. Now, for my upcoming trip to Japan this fall, I'm going to be using Safety Wing. I haven't used it yet, but I have done the research. I've read the policy, and it's what I've decided to go with. There's a link to Safety Wing in the description below if you want to take a look. And as always, please read the policy options yourself and confirm they cover what you need for your specific destination. 7 items total, 4 down, 3 to go. And if you've been taking notes at home, you already have more of a pre-trip framework than most people who've been traveling internationally for years do. Now, if the way I bring you this kind of information is useful, it would mean a lot if you'd just go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe before we finish up. It helps other travelers find the channel who think the way you and I do. And it costs you exactly nothing. All right, 3 more items to go, so let's keep on moving. This is the step where you find out you don't know what you don't know. Every destination has its own entry requirements, and they're not static. Visas, electronic travel authorizations, vaccination records, proof of onward travel, minimum bank balance requirements. Look, these can all vary and change, sometimes with a lot of notice and sometimes with very little. The best place to make sure you're up to date is travel.state.gov, the U.S. State Department's traveler resource. Before booking any international trip, pull up your destination and review the entry requirements. Don't rely on a travel blogger or some random YouTube guy. Go directly to the source, at least a few weeks ahead of your departure. A couple of specific examples worth knowing. The United Kingdom now requires U.S. visitors to obtain an electronic travel authorization, an ETA, before travel. It's not a visa. It costs about $10 and it's linked electronically to your passport, but you have to apply for it in advance. It's not something you just sort out at the gate. Europe's version of this, the ETIAS, the European Travel Information and Authorization System, is coming for the Schengen area as well. It has been delayed several times, but it will eventually be required for U.S. travelers entering most of Western Europe. If you're planning a European trip, check the current status before you go. I know it feels like there's a growing list of hoops to jump through just to go see something beautiful, and honestly, you're not wrong. But most of these are 15-minute online applications. The inconvenience is real. The disruption to your trip, if you miss them, well, it's significantly more real. The rule here is simple. Assume nothing, verify everything, and use the government source, not the airline's FAQ and not a forum post from 2 years ago. I'm going to share a story that hits home harder for me than most. Spring break 2014. We headed to Arizona on vacation. I had 2 dogs at the time, so I needed to arrange for boarding. I called one facility to make a reservation, and while they booked it for me, something about that phone call just didn't sit right. Not anything I could put my finger on specifically. The person on the other end just seemed uncertain, pausing before answering basic questions, unsure about their own policies. It wasn't alarming, it was just kind of enough, a bit of a tickle. So I booked a second facility as a backup plan. Now, the week before departure, I toured both in person. I walked the kennel area, I asked questions, watched how the staff interacted with the animals already there. And the primary facility, the first one I booked, ended up being exactly what it needed to be. So I canceled the backup before the cancellation policy triggered in, confirmed the primary reservation, and the trip went just fine. Here's why I'm telling you that story with this level of detail. I spent almost 10 years owning an award-winning luxury pet resort and spa. 10 years of watching what happens when people don't plan ahead. Families would arrive, sometimes the day of the flight, with no reservation, no backup plan, and a dog that needed to be somewhere safe for 2 weeks. I can't tell you how many people we had to turn away. In the rush of flights and hotels and activities, the family dog was the thing that fell off the list. Don't let that be your trip. Make the reservation early. Tour the facility. It's a must. And book a backup if anything about the first call gives you any pause. The cancellation policies at these places exist for a reason. Use them as a safety valve, though, not as a reason to skip the second reservation entirely. Just know that it's an option. Every bag I check or carry on gets a physical photocopy of my passport information page. Suitcase, carry-on, backpack, every single one. And before I leave for any international trips, I scan that same page and drop the file into both Dropbox and Google Drive, somewhere where I can access it from any device, anywhere in the world. I also email my complete itinerary, flights, hotels, confirmation numbers, local phone contacts, to my son Avery and to Stephanie, Avery's mother, before every trip, domestic and international. I started doing the international version specifically because something that happened to me during a trip to the UAE. My brother was sending me SMS messages that just weren't delivering. International SMS can be a little bit unreliable depending on the carrier routing, and after several days of silence on my end, he started to panic. He didn't know I was abroad. Fortunately, Stephanie had the itinerary. She was able to reach out to him, explain where I was, and reassure him that no news was in fact good news. Now, after that trip, both my brother and my sister went on the international travel distribution list. It takes 30 seconds to forward an email. The alternative is someone who loves you genuinely not knowing whether you're okay. Now, while we're on the topic of documents and ID, a brief note that's domestic in nature, but directly relevant to anyone who travels a lot. Real ID. If your driver's license doesn't have the gold star in the upper corner, it's not Real ID compliant. As of May 2025, Real ID compliant licenses or a passport is required to board any domestic flights in the United States. Now, you don't need a passport to go to Puerto Rico or the U.S. Virgin Islands. Those are domestic destinations, but you do need to get through TSA. If your license doesn't have the gold star, carry your passport instead. I have a colleague who discovered that his license wasn't compliant a couple weeks before our company's annual conference in Austin, Texas. He tried to get an updated license in time. Processing in Minnesota, though, was running about 6 to 8 weeks. He ended up driving solo from Minneapolis to Austin while the rest of the team flew. 4 days alone in a car is a lot of time to think about a gold star. He has his Real ID now. All right, that's your 7. The links to the 30-day countdown checklist PDF and everything mentioned in this episode are in the description below. But before you close this tab and start building your list, one more thing. Enroll in the loyalty programs for every airline, hotel, and travel service you plan to use on this trip. Do it before you book if you can. If you've already booked, do it now and call to have the number added to the reservation. You're already doing the hard work. The points are just the dividend. No additional spend, no additional effort. Just try to have an account before the transaction clears. Start earning for your next trip on this one. If this episode gave you the confidence that international travel is something you can prepare for, that it's a set of decisions, not just some leap of faith, then I want to show you what preparation can actually get you. Over here is our episode on Singapore, one of the most inviting, most rewarding, and most beautiful international destinations in the world. If you got this far, you passed the course. Now go put it to good use and plan your trip to Singapore. You don't want to miss it. And that, my friends, is better Latitude. We'll see you over there.